They fined me $850 for trimming a tree they swore was on common ground, then left a red notice on my door that read, "Termination in 9 days." That was the morning I decided to learn their rules better than they did. Welcome to my channel. I'm a civil engineer out of Denton, Texas, and I tell true stories about communities reclaiming their sanity from overreaching HOAs. If you're new here, hit subscribe. It helps these cases reach more homeowners. And tell me, where are you watching from tonight? The first time I saw the envelope, I thought it was junk mail, until I saw the HOA crest embossed in gold. Notice of violation, unauthorized landscaping alteration, it read. Beneath it, a fine of $850, due in 7 days, and a threat of lien if unpaid. My late father planted that oak 30 years ago. Its roots ran under the fence like old veins. When I buried him last year, I promised Mom I'd keep the house as he left it. The oak was part of that promise. 2 weeks earlier, I'd noticed a board truck parked by the pond with clipboards out. They'd been measuring fence heights and taking photos. At the time, I thought it was some maintenance audit. But that night, when I reviewed our neighborhood Facebook group, I saw half a dozen homeowners posting about mystery inspections. The comments turned bitter fast. People comparing fines, sharing photos of tagged mailboxes, one even claiming her trash can lid color was cited as non-compliant. I called the HOA president, Mark Dillard, the next morning. His voice had the practiced calm of a man who never apologizes. "You should have requested written approval before trimming any limb," he said. "It was hanging over the sidewalk," I replied. He paused. "Selective trimming compromises visual uniformity. We'll need you to restore it to original form." That line, "restore it to original form," hit me like a parody of bureaucracy. I hung mute, opened my file drawer, and started a new folder labeled HOA Q1 Disputes. By week's end, I'd documented every interaction. Phone logs, screenshots, time-stamped photos, and a digital scan of the tree service receipt. I printed everything on legal paper because I knew, if they'd escalate, I'd be ready. The real sting came when Mom called crying. "They said they can put a lien," she whispered. "Can they take the house, Danny?" "Not if I can read faster than they can," I told her. I dug into the bylaws that night, past midnight, highlighting section numbers like an engineer tracing cracks in concrete. I found a clause in Article 7, Section 3.1. Any fine exceeding $500 required a board hearing and a majority homeowner vote for enforcement. They'd skipped both. Knowledge nugget number 1. In most U.S. states, HOAs can't issue major fines without due process, typically notice, hearing, and an opportunity to be heard. Skipping those steps voids enforcement. I printed that page, circled it in red, and taped it above my desk. The next evening, as I was walking my dog, I met Susan Meyer, the retired accountant from 3 doors down. She'd gotten a $150 fine for improper mailbox alignment. I told her about the clause I'd found, and her eyes lit up. "You mean they need a vote?" she said. "They didn't vote on any of mine." By the end of the week, 6 neighbors had gathered in my garage. We called ourselves the Fairgrounds Committee, a small rebellion born under flickering fluorescent lights and the smell of motor oil. Susan brought coffee. I brought the binder. Mark Dillard must have felt the tremor. 3 days later, he posted a memo on the HOA portal warning against unauthorized neighborhood coalitions. That was our confirmation. We'd struck a nerve. I knew I couldn't just fight emotion with outrage. I needed leverage, something that couldn't be dismissed as dissent. Something with a signature and a seal. I filed an open records request with the county for all recorded plats and maintenance easements tied to our subdivision, filed between 1999 and 2012. The clerk, a woman named Carla, called me back 2 days later. "You sure you want all of them?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," I said. "Every square foot." Boxes arrived, 2 of them, filled with maps, deeds, and handwritten amendments. Most homeowners never see these documents. They live in dusty drawers of municipal storage. But as I flipped through the first parcel map, something caught my eye. A faint yellow highlight around a strip labeled Common Area 4C, Stormwater Retention, and beneath it, in faded ink, the words Maintenance, HOA Responsibility Only. That was the same patch of land where Mark's crew had claimed I trimmed common property. Only, per that document, they were the ones supposed to maintain it, not me. I sat back, stared at the paper, and whispered, "You just fined me for doing your job." Outside, the porch light buzzed. Mom's wind chime clinked in the humid air. For the first time in months, I smiled. I took the document straight to Susan's porch the next morning. Her cat blinked at me from the railing while I unfolded the plat map across her patio table. She leaned close, reading the faded notations like it was a treasure map. "They fined you for their maintenance strip?" she said, shaking her head. "Mark's got some nerve." That afternoon, I scanned the page, stamped it, Exhibit A, and emailed it to the entire board with a polite, lethal subject line: "Erroneous fine issued, Common Area 4C." Within hours, my phone buzzed with a call from a number labeled HOA Office. It was Mark again. "Danny, sending that to the full board was inappropriate," he said. "Inappropriate or accurate? You don't understand the context." "Oh, I do," I said. "You just didn't expect anyone else to." He hung up. 10 minutes later, a notice of reinspection appeared in my email, scheduled for Wednesday, 9 a.m. The timing was obvious retaliation. The inspector arrived early, a man in a blue vest with a clipboard and mirrored sunglasses. He paced around my yard, tapping his pen on the fence. "Measurements off by 2 inches, he said flatly. "From which reference point?" I asked. "Visual Uniformity Standard," he muttered, scribbling. By Friday, 3 more citations landed in my mailbox. Mailbox tilt, lawn edging variance, and unapproved decorative lighting. My porch looked like a paper storm. I kept calm, logged each notice in the binder, and started a color-coded spreadsheet. I wasn't angry anymore, just methodical. The next HOA board meeting was scheduled for March 14th, 7 p.m. at the community clubhouse. Susan and I planned to attend, but that morning, an anonymous post went up on the HOA Facebook page accusing certain residents of spreading misinformation and threatening volunteers. The comments section filled with fake accounts backing the board. Classic smear move. I printed screenshots, complete with timestamps. Evidence, not outrage. When we walked into the clubhouse, I expected tension, but not the performance that followed. Mark stood behind the podium, smiling like a senator. "Before we begin," he said, "I'd like to remind everyone this is a private association meeting. Disruptions will not be tolerated." I raised my hand. "Mr. Dillard, as homeowners, we are entitled to attend and speak under Article 2, Section 5, Open Meetings Provision." He froze for half a second. "That's only for agenda items," he said quickly. "It says all board deliberations." The room rustled. A few heads nodded. He moved on, but the control slipped. For the next hour, we listened as they rushed through budgets and security contracts, avoiding eye contact with us. Finally, under new sinus, I approached the microphone. "I'd like to address an issue of improper fine issuance regarding Parcel 4C, I began. "According to county plats," Mark cut in. "Sir, this is not the forum." "Then which one is?" I said evenly. "Because per our bylaws, your authority ends where that easement begins." The murmurs turned into whispers. Mark's jaw tightened. As I left the microphone, Susan squeezed my arm. "You just cracked the wall," she whispered. Outside, under the orange glow of the parking lot lights, a police cruiser idled. The officer inside watched us quietly, as if ready for things to go sideways. I nodded at him. He nodded back. That was the first time I felt the shift, from being on the defensive to holding something they feared. A few days later, I got a call from Rachel Ortiz, a municipal attorney I'd met during an engineering project 2 years prior. She'd seen my post in a homeowner advocacy group and offered to review the documents. Her voice was calm, analytical. "Danny, I think you're onto something bigger," she said. "They've probably overstepped more than once." She asked for every citation, every email, every timestamp. I sent her the binder scan overnight. When she called back, her tone carried quiet satisfaction. "They're in violation of the Texas Property Code, 5209.006, she said. "No hearing notice, no due process, no authority to enforce those fines. You could file for injunctive relief if it continues." I exhaled. Finally, a rulebook that worked both ways. By the following weekend, the Fairgrounds Committee had grown to 14 members. We met in rotating garages, laughing about our outlaw homeowners guild. Someone brought donuts. Someone else printed flyers about due process rights. The movement was taking shape. Early one morning, while sorting through old HOA filings Rachel requested, I found an odd page tucked behind an amendment, a 5-year maintenance contract for that same retention strip, signed not by the board, but by a shell entity called Denton Development Partners, LLC. The kicker? The contract expired last year, but the HOA kept charging maintenance fees for it. That was my second wind. I realized our board wasn't just petty, they were profiting. I drafted a letter demanding financial transparency under state association law, certified and notarized, with delivery confirmation. Knowledge nugget number 2. Homeowners in most U.S. states have the right to inspect association financials, including contracts and invoices, within 10 business days of written request. When the certified receipt came back signed by Mark himself, I circled the date, March 24th, and wrote beside it, T plus 10 days equals April 7th. That's when they'd have to open their books. In the meantime, I plan to let them bury themselves deeper. If you've ever faced an HOA like this, let me know below. Are you firmly anti-HOA, or do you think they're just misunderstood? Drop your own tactic that helped you fight back, or leave your message for any board member secretly watching these stories. As I sealed the envelope and dropped it at the post office, I couldn't help smiling. For the first time in months, the countdown favored me. April 7th came and went with no reply from the HOA. That silence was worth more than any confession. They'd missed a statutory deadline. By April 8th, they were officially in violation of state law. I printed the statute, stapled it to a copy of my letter, and labeled it Exhibit B. Susan baked banana bread that morning and said, "Guess we'll serve this warm at the hearing." She had a dark sense of humor I'd come to rely on. The HOA, however, didn't stay silent for long. The next afternoon, a pickup truck pulled up in front of my house. The driver wore a reflective vest but no company logo. He walked around snapping photos. I stepped out and asked who he was with. He muttered, "Board maintenance review," and drove off before I could get his name. At night, the HOA portal listed me under chronic violators. It was official. They were trying to make me the example. Rachel told me to stay the course. Let them keep pushing. Every action after the missed deadline compounds liability, she said. So I doubled down on documentation. I installed a motion camera by the mailbox and logged every visit, every notice, every car idling nearby. I learned to love timestamps like oxygen. The next board meeting was April 18th. I arrived early, binder in hand, and took a seat in the second row. Mark avoided my gaze, but I saw the twitch in his jaw when he noticed the growing crowd behind me. Neighbors, allies, even a local reporter Rachel had quietly invited. Halfway through the meeting, I raised my hand. "Mr. Dillard, can you confirm whether the board met its statutory obligation to produce association financials by April 7th? He shifted. "Those records are being compiled." "So, no production within the 10-day requirement?" He tried to pivot. "Our volunteers are busy. We can't meet arbitrary deadlines set by residents." That's when Rachel, sitting 2 rows behind, stood up. "State law isn't arbitrary," she said. "It's binding." The room broke into low murmurs. I caught the reporter jotting notes. Mark called a brief recess and fled to the back hallway. During that pause, Susan whispered, "You've got him cornered, but he's gonna come swinging." She was right. 3 days later, we got a cluster of inspection notices again. This time, they'd tagged everyone in the Fairgrounds Committee. They cited cracked driveways, worn fences, even non-standard mulch coloration. It was pure harassment theater. Knowledge nugget number 3. Selective enforcement, when an HOA targets specific residents while ignoring identical violations by others, is one of the fastest ways for them to lose in court. I started an evidence montage. Each night I'd photograph identical conditions at homes untouched by citations. Mailboxes leaning, fences misaligned, yet never finned. Each image had a timestamp overlay, GPS tag, and file hash. By mid-May, my binder had become a weapon, 3 inches thick, labeled with numbered tabs and a color key. When I closed it, the sound was like a door slamming on their denials. I also noticed something odd buried in the old minutes Rachel had requested. A line item for consulting retainer, $12,000, paid to a firm with no listed services. A quick search showed the company shared a mailing address with Mark's brother-in-law. I highlighted it neon yellow. Susan looked over my shoulder. That's fraud, isn't it? Maybe, or conflict of interest. Either way, it's leverage. We decided to keep it quiet, for now. Late one night, sitting at my kitchen table surrounded by papers, I felt a flicker of doubt. I wasn't sleeping much, and Mom had been asking why I looked so tired. "You're fighting ghosts," she said. "They'll wear you down before you win." I looked at the framed photo of Dad by the bookshelf, him in his work gloves standing under that same oak tree. "Not ghosts," I said softly. "Just cowards hiding behind rules. If you've ever been hit with a $500 or $1,000 fine for something you didn't even know was a rule, what would you do? Pay it or fight it like I did? Tell me below, or at least like the video so others see this story. The next morning, a certified envelope arrived. Notice of hearing for revocation of maintenance privileges. They were trying to strip my right to use the walking trail behind my own property. That was the mistake I needed, because that trail, as I'd learned from the plat maps, wasn't theirs to revoke. It was county-owned easement land, and I had proof. I picked up the phone and called Rachel. "I think it's time we make this official," I said. She chuckled softly. "You mean lawsuit official?" "No," I replied. "Something cleaner. Let's buy what they think they own." And that is when the first real plan formed, not to fight them in their court, but to outflank them in ours. Rachel laughed when I said it, then realized I wasn't joking. "You want to buy the parcel?" she asked. "Not the parcel. The rights attached to it," I said. "The HOA doesn't even know their maintenance lease expired. If we acquire that from the county, every inch of that trail and the stormwater access runs under our control." That week, I filed a Freedom of Information request with Denton County Public Works. 48 hours later, I was sitting across from a county engineer named Cliff Morrison, whose tie was permanently crooked and whose coffee thermos smelled like burnt hazelnut. He flipped through the file. "This is interesting," he said. "The HOA never renewed the easement management agreement. That land reverted to open municipal maintenance last year. Nobody's claimed the inspection rights. So it's public? Public, but assignable. You want to apply?" "Yeah," I said. "In the name of a holding entity." I created TrailGuard LLC, a 2-member Texas entity, me and Susan as co-managers. Rachel drafted the assignment request, citing public stewardship intent. It was technically true. We'd keep the trail open. Mark didn't notice a thing. The board was busy organizing a spring beautification day, complete with banners and sponsor logos. The irony was thick. They planned to repaint benches on property they no longer had authority over. On May 27th, the county clerk stamped assignment number 220317, transferring inspection and maintenance rights for Parcel 4C and its adjoining trail segment to TrailGuard LLC. I sealed the certified copy in a plastic sleeve and labeled it Exhibit C. Reversal number 1 was secured. They just didn't know it yet. I decided to let them proceed with their event. Every photo they posted, every flyer they printed would become evidence of unauthorized use. I'd give them the rope, and they'd braid their own noose. Meanwhile, the harassment intensified. Overnight, anonymous emails appeared in our neighborhood thread claiming the Fairgrounds Committee was trying to dissolve the HOA. Someone even printed fake flyers calling us the anti-community extremists. I remember Susan staring at one on her windshield. "They really think we'll break first," she said. I smiled. They're confusing patience for weakness. The day of the event came hot and humid. Kids ran with balloons, someone grilled hot dogs, and Mark strutted around in his khaki vest giving orders. I waited until mid-afternoon, binder in hand, county badge clipped discreetly inside my pocket, temporary authorization as parcel custodian. When he noticed me approaching, his smile curdled. "You're trespassing on HOA property," he said loudly. I flipped open the document. Actually, per Denton County assignment number 220317, this area's under TrailGuard management. You're welcome to stay, but under our supervision. He snatched the paper, scanned it, and his face drained. "This is fraudulent." "You can verify it with the county clerk," I said. "They stamped it last week." The officer from earlier, same cruiser, same calm expression, had been monitoring the event for traffic control. He walked over, asked what was happening, and I handed him the document. He read it, nodded once, and said, "He's right, Mr. Dillard. This is valid." Mark sputtered, "That's impossible. We've maintained this property for years. And you'll be reimbursed for unauthorized expenditures if you submit proper invoices," I replied, keeping my tone even. "Meanwhile, your beautification is an unpermitted activity on public ground." Visual beat number 1 burned into my mind. The HOA banners coming down, one by one, under the quiet supervision of a police officer. By evening, half the neighborhood knew. Posts exploded online. "Danny owns the trail now? How did he even do that?" The rumor. "Mill did my publicity for me." That night, I poured a glass of whiskey and watched the lights flicker across the now quiet trail. I felt no gloating, just relief. The first reversal was real, tangible, lawful. Still, I knew this wasn't over. When bureaucrats lose territory, they reach for control somewhere else. A week later, the HOA announced a special assessment meeting to address recent legal threats. Translation: they were going to raise dues to fund a lawsuit. Susan texted me, "You coming to this circus?" I replied, "Front row, binder ready." Halfway through the meeting, Mark launched into a speech about protecting the integrity of our community. His voice wavered when I stood and handed copies of the county assignment to every homeowner present. "If you raise dues to litigate against property you don't own," I said, "you'll all be paying for nothing." The room erupted. A retired postal worker named Harold slammed his palm on the table. "We're not your ATM, Mark," he shouted. Others chimed in. The board recessed again, visibly shaken. By the time I got home, the HOA website had gone dark for maintenance. If you've ever watched a board abuse its power and wondered whether to fight back or walk away, what's your threshold? How far should an HOA control your property before you say enough? Tell me in the comments. Let's see where folks draw their line. Rachel called the next morning. "They're desperate," she said. "We hold the high ground, but make no mistake, they'll retaliate one last time." I looked out at the oak tree, the wind stirring its leaves like applause. "Then let them," I said. "We've got one more act to play." Awaiting user input for next part 5. They didn't even wait 48 hours. A letter slid under my door with no postage mark, no return address, just my name typed in 12-point Times New Roman. Inside was a single sentence. "Trail guard will regret this, Stu. Titsue." I scanned it, filed it under Exhibit D, and told Rachel. She sighed. "That's intimidation. Don't respond, just document." The next week became a full-blown harassment montage. Tuesday, a noise complaint at 6:03 a.m. that police closed in 3 minutes flat. Thursday, a wellness check request supposedly from an anonymous neighbor. Saturday, the city inspector showed up saying the HOA reported unpermitted grading. Each time I stayed calm, handed over the paperwork, let them see my logs, and offered coffee. The officers started calling me by name. One even said, "Man, they're really gunning for you." Mom's anxiety spiked again. She'd stopped walking the trail. "What if they come after us?" she whispered. "They already have," I said, "and that means they're scared." But late that night, fear crept in. What if they found a loophole? What if they targeted Susan's property next? I kept working through the binder, rechecking every page, every statute citation, until dawn. Then a text pinged from Rachel. "We've got them." She attached a screenshot. Mark's brother-in-law's consulting firm had cashed a $12,000 HOA check 2 days after the easement transfer, labeled trail assessment. They'd billed for work on land they no longer managed. Fraud, in writing. "Don't leak it," Rachel said. "Not yet. Let's time this right." That became our new rhythm. Silence, patience, precision. I bought a cheap metal file box, numbered every tab, and locked it with a small padlock. Every click of that latch felt like progress. By July 1st, the board called an emergency session to address community misinformation. They posted notices on every mailbox like propaganda. I smiled. That meant they were nervous enough to perform. On July 5th, at 9 p.m., my porch camera caught Mark himself walking the trail with a flashlight, inspecting the benches he once claimed. I stepped outside. I'd calm. "Evening, Mark," I said. He froze. Just checking on liability issues. You're trespassing on my easement, I reminded him. Trail guard jurisdiction, remember? He muttered something about lawyers and stormed off. That moment, him retreating into the dark, was the lowest point for him and, strangely, the lowest for me. Winning had begun to feel heavy. I went inside, poured another black coffee, and opened the window. The wind carried the hum of sprinklers, the smell of wet grass, the faint sound of my own heartbeat. If you've ever faced nonstop HOA citations, do you think this level of retaliation should be criminal harassment? What precedent should we set when power gets abused like that? Leave your take below. I'm reading every one. The following Monday, the county inspector I'd worked with, Cliff, called. Danny, someone filed a complaint saying trail guards' maintenance is substandard. Want an official inspection? Yes, I said. Let's make it public. He showed up with a clipboard, ran through his checklist, and declared the area compliant and well-maintained. He even chuckled. Cleaner than half the city parks. Mind sending that in writing? I asked. Already did, he said, holding up a stamped copy. I added it to the binder. Exhibit E, Compliance Report, July 10th. That report was my shield. With it, any further claim they made about the trail was legally void. Knowledge nugget number 4. When a neutral government inspector certifies compliance, HOAs can't override it with their own aesthetic standards. Public jurisdiction trumps private preference. By mid-July, they'd boxed themselves in. Any more fines would expose them to retaliation claims. Any lawsuit would surface their conflicts. All I had to do was wait for the perfect setting to reveal everything at once. Susan called it the fireworks show. She was right. The fireworks show began on July 18th, the night of the HOA's quarterly transparency forum. Irony so thick you could pave a driveway with it. They'd rented the community center auditorium, rows of folding chairs, cheap podium, a wall projection of the HOA logo spinning lazily on a loop. Rachel, Susan, and I sat together in the third row. Cliff, the county inspector, was in the back, his badge visible just enough to matter. A local reporter hovered near the door, recording quietly. Mark opened with his usual monologue about civic pride and responsible governance. His voice was tight, his shirt already showing sweat. He spoke for 14 minutes straight before yielding to resident concerns. I stood slowly, binder in hand. Danny Cole, 118 Shady Trail, I said. I'd like to address a matter of record, specifically misuse of funds and misrepresentation of property rights. Mark sighed audibly. Mr. Cole, we've reviewed your repeated allegations. Then this will be quick, I said, placing Exhibit C on the podium. A clean, laminated copy of the county assignment, followed by Exhibit E, the compliance report. The HOA's financial statements include a $12,000 payment to a private firm dated May 29th, listed as Trail Assessment. I continued. This payment postdates the expiration of your maintenance authority. You billed members for services on property you no longer controlled. Mark tried to interrupt. Those payments were pre-approved. By your brother-in-law's firm, I said, sliding forward the bank record Rachel had subpoenaed through discovery notice. Same address, same EIN, conflict of interest, plain as day. The crowd murmured. A neighbor in the second row whispered, "Is that legal?" Mark's face reddened. "This is defamation," he barked. "Then you'll have no problem if we ask the county to confirm the record publicly," I said, nodding toward the back. That's when Cliff stepped forward, clearing his throat. Denton County Public Works confirms Trail Guard LLC holds current maintenance and inspection rights for the retention parcel and adjoining trail. Any contrary claims are invalid. The room went silent. Visual beat number 2. The fluorescent light buzzing over Mark's head as he froze mid-breath, surrounded by whispers and the slow flash of the reporter's camera. Susan leaned over and whispered, "He's cooked." Mark tried one last play. "You can't just hijack community property." "Hijack?" I said evenly. "I filed paperwork. You filed lies." That broke the room open, neighbors clapping, others shouting questions. The treasurer resigned on the spot. The vice president muttered something about reviewing governance structure and walked out. The police officer standing near the exit stepped forward just as Mark slammed his folder shut. "Sir," he said calmly, "we'll need you to stay until the county liaison collects those records." Neutral authority, right on cue. By the next morning, the HOA's Facebook page had vanished. Word spread across local homeowner groups like wildfire. HOA president faces inquiry for misuse of funds. Rachel called at noon. "We need to formalize this," she said. "If we file a complaint with the Texas Real Estate Commission and the state HOA registry, it triggers mandatory disclosure to all members." "Do it," I said. "Let's make it official." That afternoon, I took a walk along the trail. The grass shimmered under the July sun, the sound of sprinklers hissing like quiet applause. Kids were out again, parents chatting near the benches that had once been roped off. Susan joined me halfway. She carried her thermos like always. "Feels different," she said. "It's the sound of air leaving a balloon," I replied. "If you were in my shoes, watching this collapse in real time, would you push for punishment or offer them a chance to reform? Tell me below. What's fair justice when authority gets caught abusing power?" The board resigned en masse by week's end. An interim committee formed, led by Harold, the retired postal worker. Rachel helped them draft a recovery plan while I stayed quiet, letting the process breathe. But inside, I was already planning the second reversal, the one that would change the neighborhood for good. Reversal number 2 wasn't about winning, it was about rebuilding. The following week felt eerily calm, like the neighborhood had exhaled for the first time in years. The nightly patrols stopped. The portal remained offline. Even the usual gossip threads went quiet. You could hear sprinklers, dogs, laughter, simple sounds we'd forgotten belonged to us. But quiet doesn't mean closure. Rachel warned me that if we didn't replace chaos with structure, another mark would rise. "Power abhors a vacuum," she said. "You need to channel this into reform before the wrong people do." So we began drafting what we called the Open Charter Initiative, a reform package tied directly to the leverage TrailGuard held. We'd agree to relinquish our easement control only if the new HOA adopted 6 specific governance changes. 2-term limits for board officers. Transparent budgets posted quarterly online. Open meetings recorded and archived for residents. Annual independent audits with community review sessions. Fee rollback of 15% until prior surplus funds were accounted for. Creation of an ethics committee with resident elected members. We weren't dismantling the HOA, we were rebuilding it. Susan took charge of community outreach. She had this way of disarming suspicion with humor. "Tell them it's HOA. Rehab," she said, "like a 12-step program for control freaks." The proposal spread fast. By mid-August, more than 60% of residents had signed preliminary support forms, enough to trigger a formal amendment vote. Mark, meanwhile, had lawyered up. His attorney sent a cease and desist letter claiming TrailGuard's leverage was coercive. Rachel smirked when she read it. "He's trying to use ethics language against ethics reform," she said. "Let's reply with sunlight." We prepared for the August 23rd Special Assembly, held at the same community center where everything had collapsed. This time, the podium was shared, half by the interim board, half by us. The police officer from before attended again, quietly ensuring order. I took the microphone first. "What we're asking for isn't revenge," I said. "It's repair. The HOA exists to protect property values, not to punish homeowners. These reforms make sure power can't hide behind process again." The applause felt different this time, steady, respectful. Mark's lawyer tried one last argument. "These measures impose undue constraints on future governance." Rachel rose from the front row, hands clasped behind her back. "Constraints are the point," she said. "They're what keep governance lawful." When the vote began, you could hear pens scratching like rain. 12 minutes later, the count was clear. 82% in favor. Visual beat number 3 imprinted itself as the final ballot slid into a clear acrylic box, and a beam of afternoon light cut through the window, glinting off the transparent lid like a promise. The officer nodded to me on his way out, a small gesture that meant everything. By September, the reforms were recorded with the county. The HOA's new website launched with a public ledger and meeting archive. Susan's photo, smiling next to her mailbox, became the banner image. I finally took down the binder from my desk and slid it into a cabinet. The metal latch clicked closed with a clean, satisfying snap. If you were me, after months of fighting, Would you keep the leverage or hand it over for reform like I did? Drop your thoughts below. This is the question that keeps every neighborhood divided. The new board offered me an honorary advisory seat. I declined. My job's done, I said. The best kind of authority is the kind that retires itself. Still, as I walked home that evening, past the oak tree Dad planted, I felt something close to peace. The same wind that once carried hostility now rustled the leaves softly, like forgiveness. But I wasn't naive. Every community has another story waiting to be told, another fight hiding behind a fence. And I knew exactly what I'd call the next one. The first morning after the vote, I woke before sunrise. The air had that damp coolness Denton only gets for a few hours in late summer. I poured coffee, stepped out onto the porch, and looked at the oak. Its branches, freshly trimmed and balanced, stretched like an old friend shrugging off the weight of winter. For the first time in a year, there was no envelope on my door, no threat taped to my mailbox. Just peace, earned, not gifted. At 9 o'clock, Rachel called. "It's official," she said. "The reforms are recorded. The old HOA corporation filed dissolution papers, and the new charter's registered under the community trust." I laughed quietly. "So it's done." "Almost. The ethics committee still needs its first chair." "Susan's name," I said instantly. Rachel chuckled. "I already nominated her." The story spread fast. Local news picked it up under the headline, "Homeowners reclaim HOA after fraud scandal. New charter prioritizes transparency." Within a week, other neighborhoods called asking how we'd done it. Rachel compiled a small guide, 10 pages, plain language, step by step. How to audit bylaws, file open records requests, and demand due process. She posted it online under a Creative Commons license. The views climbed into the thousands. That Friday night, Susan and I hosted a block cookout, our first without the HOA's permit committee. Kids drew chalk art on the sidewalks. Someone brought a portable speaker playing old country tunes. Cliff showed up in his rumpled shirt, holding a paper plate stacked with ribs. "You two built a case study," he said, grinning. "The county's using your file as an example for conflict of interest training." "Guess we made the syllabus," I said. Mom came too. She looked healthier, lighter. "Your father would have been proud," she told me. "He hated bullies in suits." Around 9, as the crowd thinned, Susan handed me an envelope. Inside was a single sheet of stationery with the new community logo at the top. HOA Open Charter. Resolution of Recognition. This certificate honors Trailguard LLC and its founders for defending transparency, preserving property rights, and restoring community trust. Underneath, 6 signatures glistened in fresh ink. I set it against the porch light, watching the paper glow amber. In the weeks that followed, the domino effects kept rolling. The HOA's insurer canceled coverage pending an internal audit. Mark accepted a plea agreement for filing false reports and resigned all association credentials statewide. The surplus fund, previously unaccounted for, financed a new community day for the neighborhood, food trucks, games, free legal clinic booths for homeowners from nearby subdivisions. Our story had become a small reform movement. If you believe I fought the right way, and this is how it should end, say a few words in the comments for your friend who's still stuck under a bad board. Subscribe so future stories reach you first. And share this, not for me, but so the next homeowner knows there's a lawful path out of fear. That's on us. Late one night, I walked the trail alone. The moonlight pooled on the asphalt, the new benches gleam, and with fresh varnish. Somewhere, a sprinkler hissed, and the smell of wet soil rose like memory. I reached the oak, placed my palm against the bark, and whispered, "We kept it, Dad." Then I turned toward the quiet row of houses. Porch lights steady, windows open, the sound of a neighborhood finally breathing right again, and smiled. Next case? There's a cul-de-sac 2 towns over where a board just banned Christmas lights. Guess I'll be paying them a visit.